My name is Aubree Adams. I am the director of Every Brain Matters, which was a gift given to me by Julie Schauer, who's on this meeting tonight. She believed in my dream and she gave me the opportunity to form it with other families. And I am forever grateful for that. And so thank you, Julie. I am a former Colorado mom, and I'll talk about my Colorado experience. And then I'll talk about my recovery experience tonight. I'm just going to have a conversation. This isn't a formal presentation or anything like that. I just want to share some hope. And I want you all to know that my son and my husband both give me permission to share parts of their stories, but I don't use their names. I'll start from the beginning. As a child, I pretty much thought my life was normal. My parents lived in a perfect neighborhood, but then they started having problems, and then they divorced when I was 8 years old. I remember at that moment, my brother drastically cried, and I didn't know what the word divorce meant at the age of 8, so I just knew it must be bad because my brother's cried, and I really don't ever see my brother cry. And so they did divorce. My parents had different relationships with other people. Alcoholism was part of the scenario. My mom ended up remarrying, and she wanted to move to California. And so during this time, I became pretty depressed. I didn't have a word for it at the time, but now I do. I understand my severe depression started as a young child. I remember feeling very sad, and that I just wanted to please everyone because a lot of the adults in my life were fighting. And during my recovery process as an adult, it's just so bizarre to me because I started remembering things that happened as a child that I really hadn't thought of in 30 years. It was just bizarre. And one of those incidences where I think I was feeling so down and so sad as a child that I used to walk to school, and sometimes I'd cut through the woods or I'd go through this big field. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to school today. I'm just going to get myself lost in the woods. And I did that. I wandered around in the woods. I don't know how long I was out there, but I did not go to school. And I think at the time, I don't know why I did it, but I just think at the time I didn't know how to handle my emotions. And it was just kind of a cry for help, not knowing what to do because I was pretty quiet at that time. My parents went through a custody court battle for about 3 years. I had to testify in court, meet with lawyers and judges. I remember feeling very stressed out and sad and confused. There was big changes happening in our life. We had moved from a home that we lived in this perfect neighborhood into this apartment townhouse. And there was just all these changes happening. I remember at that point, I saw my older brother really change, and he started using marijuana at that time. By the time I was 11, my mother and my stepfather did move to California. We were in St. Louis, Missouri at the time. And my biological father gained full custody of my brother and me. And we moved in with my biological dad full time. And for the most part, things just didn't go well. But I played along with life and just kept trying to keep the peace, to doing good in school, playing sports, doing what I like to do and having fun with my friends and working and just kind of doing the normal teenage stuff. I did end up during my teenage years using marijuana with my brother and some of his friends. A few times I did it, I didn't feel right. A few times I did it, I enjoyed it a lot. I would laugh and I would joke and eat a lot. Until I was 16, I was with my boyfriend. And, of course, I wanted to smoke pot because I wanted all the guys to like me, especially my boyfriend. And I remember only taking a few hits that night, and I became severely paranoid. I was in a severe panic attack. I tried to hide it. I truly thought I was going to die. And I came down, I don't know how many hours later, and I was just thinking, I just got to get through this moment. And I told my boyfriend at the time, who ended up being my husband in my 20s, I said, if you want to be around this drug, if you want to be around marijuana, that's fine, but you can't be with me. That's what I told him. And as far as I know, at that point, he was 18 and he quit. And we moved on, and we ended up getting married in our 20s. I had some more family issues, but just kind of dealt with it and kept going to school and taking care of myself and doing what I needed to do. My husband and I ended up having 2 sons. I had a few miscarriages. I know I experienced postpartum depression. I think depression has been, like I said before, part of my life since I was a little girl. I remember I was very, very depressed, and my doctor put me on an antidepressant. And obviously, it was the wrong type of medication for me because I started doing really bizarre behaviors. I started harming myself. I started being delusional and calling a lot of people and saying weird stuff. I did not know what psychosis was, but I believe at that time I was in psychosis. I remember my husband and my father being very scared. I don't think they understood what was happening. I didn't understand. I just knew that I was not like this prior to the antidepressant. So I quit taking the medication, and then I started getting better. And then I just thought, I can't ever go through that experience again. So I have never tried medication since then for my depression. Not to say that it doesn't help other people, but I had a terrible experience, and that's why I have never tried it again. But I have seen people do very well on antidepressants. I don't know if there's just something in my genetics or what it is, but I'm just very scared of it. My husband and I pretty much had a normal marriage. We had our ups and downs. In the meantime, my mother and my stepfather moved to Pueblo, Colorado, and I was going out there visiting them as I was becoming a mom. And I wanted to be near my mom, and I fell in love with Colorado. I just could not believe the mountain range. It just looked like I was driving into heaven every time I drove out there. And so I talked to my husband into moving there, and we moved there in 2005 when my younger son was 18 months old. And for the most part, we had a normal life. It was a good family community. My kids had great schools. We had great teachers. We had good friends. We were hanging out with family and going camping, involved in scouting, and marijuana was not even a topic of conversation. We never were exposed to the smell of it or the smoke of it. I mean, we enjoyed going up to the mountains and camping and hiking and doing all the fun stuff. We lived in a great historic neighborhood. We were living the dream. It wasn't a perfect life, of course, but for the most part, we were doing pretty good. But then legalization came to Colorado, and I knew it wasn't a good idea. I didn't vote for it. But I did not realize just the storm that was coming to my family. So right after the marijuana stores opened up in 2014, my son's behaviors began to change. And we thought he was just growing up, his adolescence. He was having some kind of mood swings and stuff. We just thought it was growing pains. But by February 2015, when he was a freshman in high school, my son's behaviors were extreme. He was paranoid. He was irrational. He was repeating many things that didn't make sense to me. And he just kept repeating them over and over. He became violent. And one night he tried to take his life. I was in big denial. I remember my husband waking me up and saying, our son just tried to kill himself, and you need to wake up, and we need to do something. And I was like, no, he would never, ever do that. Like, that's not right. But he was right. My son took a bunch of pills, and there was vomit all over his room. We took him to the hospital. At this moment, I kind of came to the realization that he felt, I just felt so bad for him. My husband and I, we were inconsolable. I mean, nobody could comfort us during this time. I don't think we stopped crying for 3 days straight. I remember being in the ER, and our nurse was one of the moms of, a family that my kids went to school with. And this mom had a daughter named Aubree, and I had a special bond with this little Aubree that went to school, and I would talk to her, and we'd talk about our names. And so I remember this mom, saying, I can't be part of this case because I know this family. And it just, our lives just completely changed at that time. When my son was then put in a psychiatric unit, and that was horrifying as it is, because there were little kids in there that were suicidal, like 7, 8 years old. And it was just, so sad. And we were just all changing. And I still didn't know what psychosis was at this time. And so when he was discharged, my son was still suicidal. He was irrational. He was paranoid. And I kept taking him back to the ER, and they kept saying it's just marijuana. They sent us home. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't leave him alone. I was afraid he was going to kill himself. I just knew he wasn't in his right mind, and I didn't understand what was happening. And I did take him back to the ER. I even called the police at one time because he was so out of his mind running down the street. The police actually got him, handcuffed him, and took him to the ER. And that happened quite a number of times, especially in the summer of 2015. But they did admit him again into another psychiatric unit, but in a different town, because they said that there were no available beds for him in Pueblo at this time. After that discharge, my son told me he was using dabs, and I didn't have a clue. I didn't know what a dab was. And my son called it dabs really strong marijuana, and he called them crack weed. And so I got busy educating myself and getting very active and realizing that these dabs, the strong concentrations of THC, were being mass produced in our community and sold, and was called medicine. And I got angry. I got very angry that this was happening. I started getting very vocal about it. I just could not believe this. My son's brain at this point was hijacked, and he had the disease of addiction, and I could not find treatment for him. They did not treat for marijuana abuse or addiction. So my friend was a social worker, and she told me, as a resident of Colorado, as a taxpayer, I could volunteer my family for crisis intervention with the Department of Social Services. And I did. It took me a few months to get a case open, but I did. And they sent a therapist into our home to work with the whole family. And she was a good therapist. But she never recommended that I get support or that I would go to a recovery meeting or Al-Anon. Nothing like that was mentioned. I guess it was like kind of a different kind of recovery. I don't know. I did everything she told me to do because I was just desperate for my son to get better and everybody to get better. But we were having a lot of uncontrollable behaviors at that time. And when my son wasn't on marijuana, he didn't have those types of behaviors. He was his normal self, and the kid I knew all those years. And so it was hard. I won't go into too many details, but there was a lot of crisis moments. And we had to lock ourselves in our bedroom sometimes, or I would have to look at my younger son and tell him to get out of the house because I could see my older son escalating. And so what happened after that is my son progressed to meth. And that was even worse. He was running around the neighborhood. The people he was doing drugs with didn't understand what was happening. And they were sending me messages like, you better control your son. He can't handle his drugs. And they were beating him up. And my parents lived about 3 blocks away from me. And my son would show up there, beat up, bloodied. Then he'd come bounce down to our house. And I don't even know. Like, I think I contacted our case manager and the crisis line like 22 times that weekend. I even somehow got him in the ER that weekend, but we couldn't find help. And by late in the evening, one evening, my husband and I were able to kind of capture him in the house. And this was a very hard moment. And my son, he smelled very bad because he had been kind of running for 2 days. And he was very dirty. He hadn't eaten, he hadn't sleeping, he hadn't drank water. And this is why this is a private thing. We had to shower him. He was so psychotic, he couldn't even shower himself. And so that was such a defining moment. And he was in such denial after we did get him cleaned up. We were on the phone, like even with the pharmacist, asking the pharmacist, what can we give him something now to help him calm down? And we were trying to get him hydrated. And after we kind of got him calmed down, he was like, hey, can we go to the movies? Like, he was just not in his right mind. Anyways, things would get better and then they would get worse. And the people he was hanging out with were affiliated with gangs, and it was bad. And when my son would go into psychosis, his behaviors are very out of control, and he would go to this group and not act appropriately with them. And then I would get messages that my house was going to be shot up if I couldn't control my son. I got multiple times of that. And then a girl my son was dating, her mother had a drug problem, was affiliated with these gangs, and she put on Facebook one day, F with one of us, F with us all. And for 3 nights in a row, mobs of people came after my son. And it was bad. And I won't go into too much detail, but by the grace of God, he survived that. The police said, the only way you're going to make this go away is if you don't go anywhere for a long time. So my son stayed inside for 6 weeks at that point. He did not leave the house. He didn't even go in the backyard, in the front yard, anything. And the day he did leave the house, one of the kids that was sending me the threats to shoot up our house shot another teen right around the corner, right around the block from us. Then more crime was happening in our neighborhood. There was a man that was murdered by my parents' garage. This man was growing and selling marijuana in his home, and he was killed over a transaction. This is all after legalization. I had 2 illegal marijuana grow houses within a block of me. One was selling out their back door. The other one had a home invasion on a Tuesday afternoon. I was just talking to my husband the other night, and I had forgot about this. Our garage was broken into twice. They got into our cars and they took his work equipment. I was like, I just even forgot about that. And then there was a gang shooting and a car crash right in front of my house. And at that point, I was like, I told my younger son, you're not allowed to walk the dog around the neighborhood. I was living in fear. I was mad. Our community, not just my family, but my whole community just turned upside down. And I was being pretty vocal about it, and volunteering and educating people to not adopt these kind of policies. So advocacy came in right away for me because I was so upset. Eventually, the Department of Social Services discharged us. I'm sorry, after the meth thing, they did put him in a dual diagnosis program up in Denver, where they totally over-medicated him on antipsychotics. There was like 3 different medications. My son was like a walking zombie, and he was drooling all the time. He couldn't stay awake. And the psychiatrist there wanted to keep putting him on medications, and my son's counselor at the time argued with him and said, no, you can't do that. And I got very upset, and I said, take him off all the medications. Let's see where his baseline is. And so they did. They weaned him off all the medications. He seemed to be okay. They discharged him from the program, and then we just went right back into the cycle. We had moments of normalcy, and then he would just go into the cycle of psychosis, running away, being on the streets. There were plenty of families willing to take advantage of him, allow them to use and sell their legal homegrown marijuana. And at that time, he relapsed just to marijuana because he was calling it the safer drug in medicine. Social services did discharge us. When he went back to using again, and he kept running away. They had given us a different therapist this time. They sent a male therapist into our home because my husband was kind of checking out at this time. And they recognized that. I had walked away from my job. I had a dream job, but I couldn't leave my kids alone in the home anymore. It just wasn't safe for that. So here we were. My son he would come home sometimes, but then he would just be on the streets. And then there was a moment where he did show up at my house, like he quit going to school. He didn't do any of that. And I called the police when he showed up at the house, and the police were telling me that I had to let my son back in the home. And I was explaining to them that my son wasn't safe and my son needed help. And they called social services, and social services said, we did everything we could do to help that family. It's up to the parents now. Well, I wasn't finding affordable treatment. And I remember talking to my friend Julie, who's on the meeting today, and she gave me a number of a consultant. And that young man had a place in San Diego that he said, I know that this would be a good place for him. For the grace of God, my son was willing to talk to this young man on the phone and agreed to go to this other dual diagnosis program in San Diego. And that's where we went. And pretty much at that moment, that was the beginning of our recovery. That's when it started, because this program educated me very well on what my part was, what recovery was, encouraged me to go to meetings, and learn all I could. They did not minimize marijuana's effects on his brain. Matter of fact, they never charged us for our copays. This place was out of network, but I think they had some kind of funding with Harvard where they were starting to study these kids that were on marijuana. And I think my son was kind of like a prime candidate for that, so they could collect data from him. So I never did receive a bill for his time there. He got so healthy there. He was muscular, shiny. I mean, just the spitting image of health. He was him. He was pretty resentful to me because I was the one holding the hard lines with him. I just knew that I needed to keep finding an environment where he could thrive and not destroy himself. And I knew Pueblo, Colorado was not an option for him when he got out of this treatment center in San Diego. And that's when I found Houston, Texas, which I call ground zero for the youth recovery movement. And he joined an APG, an alternative peer group called Cornerstone. And then maybe you have been to some of the Every Brain Matters meetings, had met Joe Parker. That's his program. And so I took him there May or July. No, it was 2006. I think it was May of 2016. And my son accepted that he would be there, and he lived with host families for 2 years. And I think one of his host moms was on this meeting tonight, and he lived with her and her family for a year and a half, which is kind of unheard of for this kind of program. But this was a special circumstances, and all parties involved agreed to this. And we all became very close. She's still my very good friend to this day. We just spent time together about a month ago, and I slept over at her house, and we just really love each other and support each other. And I'm very grateful because, what kind of person is like take a stranger into their house, who has a drug addiction, but she understood it. They were a very recovering family within this program. The Cornerstone program is a very intensive, dynamic, they call it an enthusiastic, parent-driven program. It's not just going to meetings, it's really getting involved, living and breathing recovery. And when I got back, after I took my son to Houston, I went back to Colorado. And within a few days, my husband got hurt at work. And during this time, my husband was kind of spiraling down. And I was coddling him, just thinking, this poor man's in so much pain, watching our son destroy himself. But then my husband got hurt at work and tested positive for marijuana. And it just all made sense to me at this point. His behavior changes. He was very depressed, suicidal. He told me that the bud tenders told him to smoke 24% THC and his panic attacks would go away. And I was done at that point. I was really so overwhelmed and stressed that I separated myself from him in the home. I didn't have a pathway out, and I was too ashamed to ask for help. So our home became very toxic, and my husband withdrawing from marijuana and going through this. He was suspended from his job. And at this time, I didn't have a job because I had walked away from my job because I needed to be in the home to make sure the kids were safe. So I had to get to work. I started calling all my old employers and just taking whatever job I could and to keep paying our bills and stuff. And then trying to shelter my younger son from everything. And then I would go visit my older son in Houston. I was trying to get my husband to go visit our son in Houston, but I didn't understand that his anxiety, he wasn't mentally totally stable to get on a plane. And that's why he didn't want to. He has now told me that. And so I kind of got even more resentful toward my husband because he just checked out of fatherhood and being a husband at that point. And because he was lost in his addiction. And anyways, further down the road, he ended up getting hospitalized in a psychiatric unit. And when he was hospitalized, the medical professional said, "Oh, we heard you're trying to leave," because I had decided I was going to move to Houston and take my younger son and be reunited with my older son. And so they told me, "You need to leave before he gets out of the hospital," because he was very suicidal. He was having severe mood swings. There were times when I lived with him that I would go sleep in a hotel because I was scared of him. And I was seeing a counselor at the time, and I would carry a suitcase in my car just in case my son and I had to leave right away if my husband's moods escalated. And that's just kind of how I lived for a couple of years. But he did accept help, and he went to the psychiatric unit, and they said, you have to leave now before he gets out so things don't get worse. And so I did. And that was hands down the hardest thing I've ever done. I left everything that we worked for. We had 2 homes in Colorado, our furniture, everything. I put what I could in the storage, like my pictures and stuff like that, which are still in storage in Colorado. Kind of my life is still in the storage unit in Colorado. And took my 2 dogs. My 2 kids were with me at the time. I said, just pack whatever clothes you can in a bag, and we left. And that was 2018, and we went to Houston, lived in with some families, and my younger son and I joined my older son's recovery community, like the Cornerstone community, and we just dove into recovery, which we needed to. And my younger son hadn't touched a drug, but he was depressed. He had PTSD, so he joined the Recovery High School Archway Academy. He started working his own program, got a sponsor. I was already working with my sponsor at that time. She was very gentle with me. She understood what I was going through because she had similar experiences. And I just started doing what I could to improve. I was severely depressed during that time, but I kept trying to show up and really dive into this program of recovery. We lived and breathed recovery. I only went to recovery events, social gatherings. I only went to recovery meetings. Like I didn't really hang out with anybody who wasn't in recovery. And I really needed to do that. This support program is exactly what I needed too, not just my son, And I started really realizing that I wanted him to work a recovery program, but really working my own program was going to be key to my healing and my growth. So thank God I did that. And thank God we had this community. I mean, because it's all about community. During this time, my son did achieve over 3 years of sobriety. He finished his intensive outpatient program there. And then as soon as he did that, his behavior started to change again. And we were taught in the program that the behaviors change before they even pick up the drugs again. And that is exactly what I witnessed. His behaviors started changing before he even relapsed. I tried to get on the same page with him. This was probably another really hard moment of my life. And he wasn't hearing it. I think he was 19 at this time. He had worked hard pretty much his whole teenage life trying to recover and do that. And I think he just, 19-year-olds, a lot of them rebel. And he wanted to test the waters again. So I did have to ask him to leave the home because he wasn't following the rules of the home, which probably put the final nail in the coffin between our two relationships, because he was already very resentful to me because I was the one holding the strong line. And so he left, and he went and lived kind of with another family, and they were very welcoming. They didn't really back me up on what I was trying to do with my son. So I was able to stay in contact with my son. I think for a good 6 or 7 months after that, he was using. I would be with him when he was drunk and high, and we would go walk the dogs. I'd take him to get something to eat. We'd go to the movie theaters. But I knew I tried to get him to come back home, but then I kept saying, he was during acts of use again. I couldn't bring that into my home. And so, I really lost him at that time. And he ended up, this was during COVID, he ended up sending me a letter saying he didn't want to see me. He would contact me within a year. And that was that. And I was at my lowest point at that point. And I had enough recovery tools that I put a plan in place for myself so I wouldn't spiral too deep into the depression, though I was very deep in there. But I reassured my sponsor and a few of the moms and Joe Parker that if my thoughts were too dark, I would get myself to the hospital myself. And it took me kind of like 2 or 3 days to kind of come out of that fog and then start taking care of myself again and doing what I needed to do to be a healthy person and enjoy my life and be there. So it was definitely a process. I didn't get better overnight or anything, but I did slowly get better. And I ended up continuing. Before my son left the program, we started hosting kids in recovery in our home. That's part of the program. And even when my son left, my other son and I started hosting kids in recovery, which I think was where I learned the most about recovery. I healed a lot during that time. I matured a lot during that time. I ended up sponsoring other moms, which helped me a lot. I feel like I've learned more as a sponsor. So if you're at that point where you can sponsor, I highly recommend it because you do learn a lot through that process. And I would go to like 4 or 5 meetings a week. I would. I had another bump in the road during this time. I was diagnosed with cancer. We got through that. I'm okay. I'm still being checked, but I'm okay. Thank God. And we did not see my son after a year. Fast forward 2.5 years later, we still hadn't seen him. I had seen a picture of him. He looked healthy and wonderful. And my younger son was graduating from Archway Academy. And so my younger son invited my older son to come to his graduation party. And he agreed to come over. And so we knew he was coming. And he showed up at the house. I was actually in the back of the house running a recovery meeting. If anybody sees Josie, who talked on the Every Brain Matters platform, I was actually doing a meeting with her when my son showed up at the house. The party was starting. And as soon as we were done with that meeting, I walked into the hallway into the living room, and my sponsor grabbed me and she looked at me and she embraced me and she said, "Your son is here." It had been two years. "Your son is here. He doesn't look well, and you're going to be okay." That's what she said to me. And I needed to hear that. That was the good moment. And I said, okay, I'm going to be okay. And so I just started going on, making sure the food was out and everything. And then my son did approach me in the kitchen and he gave me a really, really big love hug. And the whole party just got silenced, because everybody knew he was gone. Like some of the families had never even met him before. And then some of the families knew him when he was in Cornerstone. So it was kind of like this very surreal moment. And my son did not look well. He was very thin, but we interacted well. And after that, I ended up moving back to Colorado with my family for a financial reprieve, because this took a financial toll on my family, as you can imagine. We ended up selling both of our homes in Colorado to pay bills and stuff. Anyways, so I needed that reprieve, and my son and I were talking. He was staying in contact with me at that point, sharing how sick he was. He said he had a bacteria in his stomach. And then last December, almost a year ago, he called me, said he needed help. So we picked him up from Houston. We brought him back to Colorado. He was very sick, very sick. He admitted he was using marijuana, the THC products, the hemp products that they sell throughout Texas now. And he couldn't eat. He, every day at that point, my son had recovery tools, even though he was using, he still had those tools. I had those tools, and we interacted fine. We were very compassionate towards each other. We worked together as a team. When we got to Colorado, things didn't go well. So I actually needed to bring him back to Houston to get him in an environment where he might have a chance to recover and get better. And my friends, Nancy and Tim Yates, said, come on down. These are the rules of our house. As long as he's following the rules, you're following the rules, you can come on in and live with us. And they let us move in, and we did. And they're our angels, and I'm so very grateful for them. They're a family in recovery too. My son got better, not great, but he got better. And then at the point where my support turned into enabling, he moved on. I believe he moved in back with his girlfriend, and that was, I think, last March or March. Yeah. And that's it. I mean, he's doing his own thing now. At the time he was with me, he was only testing positive for THC. I'm for sure he had cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. It took him a while to detox. He was still testing positive for THC about 60 days after that. And this is where I'm at. I'm in Houston living with my friends right now. And during this process of when things didn't go well with my family and stuff, and watching my son leave again, it triggered something in my brain. It triggered these memories and these things that happened to me as a kid. I don't know if you guys have ever heard a presentation or read that book about the Body Keeps Score, I think it's called. I didn't necessarily believe in that, but boy, do I believe in that now, because I think I needed to go through this process to remember some stuff that happened to me and make peace with it. And so when I started having these memories again, I got a therapist, and I said, I need to meet with you weekly. I need to process this. This is pretty intense. And I've been doing that. I've been doing that for the past, I think, 3 months now. And she has helped me tremendously. And I continue to work my own program. During COVID was when I was allowed to form the Every Brain Matters community with other families. That was a very, very healing process. I had met Bart Bright, and he was telling me about Maranon, and Brooke, who had made this wonderful website, and that we should start having Maranon meetings. I'm like, I'm on board. How can I help? And I helped him start meetings, and I helped develop Maranon. And that was a very healing process to me. All this recovery work is still very healing to me. The good news is that my husband and I are talking more. He has really dug himself out of a deep hole, built up a lot of resilience, recovery, coping tools, and him and I are working on our relationship. I mean, it's actually the silver lining through this whole thing. And And we're talking about me moving back to Colorado next month. So here I go, back and forth, Houston, Colorado. But we never divorced through this process. We've been together since we were teens, like I told you about. I truly know him. He knows me. He hasn't used marijuana, and I would say at least over 3 years, and it might have been 4. So we've been separated since 2016. I left in 2018, so that's many, many years we have been separated with. But now he has really helped me process these memories that I started remembering. He was there for some of it during my teenage years, and he was like, welcome to your awakening. He was like, I knew there was stuff that you really went through that was totally uncalled for, and I'm so glad you're taking care of yourself now. That's pretty much what he's told me. So just to kind of wrap it up, I've talked very, very long, which is normally what an Aubree thing kind of does. I just want to do key points to my recovery that really helped me, some powerful tools. One is I truly understand the meaning of letting go. And that means letting go of any outcomes, the delusion of my control, getting out of my husband's way, getting out of my son's way was the best thing I could ever do. I couldn't fix it for them. I couldn't control it for them. They had to make their own decisions. And there was consequences for my leaving. There's been consequences for them, for their decisions, for my decisions. There's no right or wrong answer during recovery. It's just that you got to make the next best move that's right for you. And that's what I've learned, and still to this day. What is the next right move for me to do? The 12 steps have really given me the tools to save my own life. I was so codependent and so down that I did not want to be, here. I truly thought I was a complete failure. I would beat myself up, shame myself. Nobody can shame me like I can shame myself. And I have stopped all that. That is done because I realized too, my drug of choice is my control. And I finally understood that was my drug of choice. Of one day I was really upset. I was messaging my sponsor. I'm like, I need to talk to you. I'm really upset. Oh my gosh, this is happening, blah, 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 blah. And she gets on the phone with me, and she's a very nice, kind British lady. And she's like, yes, Aubree. Well, okay, tell me, who are you trying to control right now? That's why you're upset? And bang, that did it right there. I realized I was the cause of my own pain, and I was good at it, and I needed to break that habit. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at it to this day. I have my good days and my bad days. But when I am upset, when I am depressed, when I am anxious, when I am in fear, when I am sad, I'm angry, it's because I'm trying to control something that I cannot control. I'm acting like I'm God and can just control whatever I want and make people do things I want and fix the situation. And I can't. So accepting that right along there, accepting my life, where my loved ones are, accepting myself, that's a formula that equals peace. That acceptance just brings total peace to me. And that feeling of peace, of acceptance, is so healing and so comforting to me. And I can do that. I can comfort myself when I actually figure that out. And one of the tools I do to figure that out is I look at the serenity prayer. Accept the things I cannot change. Draw a column. What am I not accepting or I want to change? The courage to change some in that scenario. What can I control? What can I change? And then the wisdom to know the difference. And usually in the column, that what I can control and what I can change is only me. And I have the power to do that. And that brings my joy back. That brings my peace back. That brings my gratitude back. And I'm very, very grateful for that. I'm surrendering my will. Stop acting like God and having this delusion that I can control things. stop future tripping and focusing on the future, focusing on the moment, just for today, maybe just for now, just for this hour, and being present like that keeps my depression at bay, keeps my anxiety at bay. It allows me to focus on taking care of me. I also had learned that positive peer, healthy, sober peers were great for my kiddos, but I didn't realize that I needed my positive, healthy peers around me. And I am so grateful. I am totally surrounded by positive, healthy peers. A lot of you are on this meeting tonight, and I draw a lot of strength from you guys. And I'm so very grateful for that. I am overwhelmed with love and support. I am truly blessed. And I also understand that the pain that I have is a necessary ingredient for when I need to correct something in my life and I need a change. And I accept that more. Like, okay, here comes the pain because you made this mistake. Now, what are you going to do, Aubree? Are you going to learn from it? You're going to grow from it? Or are you going to pout and shout about it, you know? So taking the responsibility for my own actions, cleaning up my side of the street is definitely powerful. And I just don't waste my time being concerned about what other people's opinions are of me. If I have learned that if people maybe are calling me names, maybe slandering who I am, that's a them problem, not a me problem. And that's because they're trying to control and change me and manipulate people around them to take sides. And Aubree Adams doesn't work that way. I need family. I need a team. I am very grateful for my recovery, and I need everyone to connect with so I can be a healthier person. So I talked almost the whole hour, but I'm open to any questions or anything. If anybody has anything they want to ask me or make a comment, I'm open to that. Thank you for letting me talk so long. I think there's a question in the chat. Hello, Ashley from Florida. Welcome. Kelly says, curious how you would connect with the sponsor. My son is currently in residential treatment and will be coming home in December. We will transition him to IOP, but we do not have a lot of resources in Idaho. I know somebody in Idaho that sponsors, Kelly. I can connect you with her. She's on this meeting. She might be full. I don't know. She might have too many sponsees. Or if you come to Maranon meetings, what we do in Maranon meetings, the people that are available to sponsor usually put their phone number next to their name, or we make an announcement in the meeting who here is available to sponsor. And you can meet somebody and ask them to be your sponsor at that time. And it would be very beneficial for you because working your own recovery program is key to recovery. And so we invite you. Tomorrow morning, I run a Maranon support group. And so please join us for that one. It's a great group of people. Every week, I'm just blown away. I'm like, oh, we can't have another great meeting like that. And then we end up doing it over and over again every week. It's just because the people that attend that group are just so committed to their recovery and really enjoying their life the best they can. And so please, we invite you to come.
Can I say something, Aubree?
Yes. Hi, Julie.
Hi there. I have to say, it's been a long trip. You know, I met you in 2014. I'm sure that's when it was. Maybe it was 2000. Maybe it was early 2015.
Yeah.
Okay. But it was 2015.
Yeah.
And it's been quite a trip. It is unbelievable what you have gone through and what you've experienced. And it's so many it's other families that have, if close to equally a traumatic situation. And it's so devastating. It's why we keep doing what I'm doing. We need to get the word out, though. We need not to be afraid to share it. I already shared with Heidi this story, but today I went to the Art Institute this afternoon in Chicago, and I just happened to sit with two couples. And one of the women is from Colorado. They were all in Chicago at a conference. So, but one man was a doctor, and he knew in Utah, and he knew all about CHS, and he knew, he's an emergency medicine. Not that he gets a lot, and he's into different things, but he knew about it. He knew that the psychosis was a problem and all that. But one woman was from Colorado, from Montrose, and she said, well, I voted for it, but now I really think it's what I've seen. And she said, well, I admit I did it some. I thought it was okay, and I would guess she's in her, 40s. I don't know how old people are, mid 40s. But she said her brother is a wreck because of it. He's been doing it for 10 years. He's 45 years old. He lives at the parents' house and he doesn't have a job. And that's all he does. And he said he started using it for his anxiety, but he's got so much more anxiety than he had before. It's so pathetic. It is so pathetic that we would do this to our country.
So true. And Julie really knows my story. She's been my friend all along, all these years. She was the one who found that consultant for us during that standoff with the police in front of my house. I was like, you're never going to believe what's happening right now. She's like, here, call this number. And thank God, I think the young man's name was Trevor. I don't even know if he knows how he changed the trajectory of our lives.
I don't know either, but that person was given to me by Nancy Hands, who is she was Virginia Prevention Network. I think she's probably retired right now. But that is amazing. That is amazing that things like that happen.
Yeah. Just shows how much we need each other. We just need each other. We just cannot isolate and be alone. We got to keep reaching out.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julie, for all the love and support. I really appreciate it.
Yes. Well, it's just devastating. It's hard for the rest of the world to understand if you don't have it. I mean, and if you don't have that same things, and I'm going to admit my is not the same thing, but I do have a child who is okay now, but was institutionalized for nearly 3 years. And it's devastating. This was a while back. It was not a drug issue, but it was other issues. But through therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy and not medicating, that she is in her own self-awareness and wanting to get better, that she did get better. But that was precious adolescent years, like age 11 to 14. And all these issues, whether when they're mental health or their drug abuse, they take a long time. And that's what people everybody needs to near that. There are no quick fixes for this. I mean, some people get lucky and their kid will suddenly grows up and stops for whatever reason, and something makes them stop, but there's no guarantee that that's ever going to come. And, if you don't really do your, your homework.
Yeah. So true. So true.
So, but it is, and that's when people keep talking about the mental health problem and don't understand that the legalization of marijuana has something to do with it. It is just, it's in all the drug use, and we're not doing drug prevention right the correct way anymore. It's just terrible.
It's terrible. And the advocacy work has been very healing for me. I know it's not for everybody, but it takes my anxiety that I feel about what I can't control a lot around the world, and it turns it into action. And that's why I do recovery, but I also am an advocate and will continue to do that. I just was with Corinne Gasper in Ohio. And we did presentations together, and we had people coming up to us. We were raising awareness. They came up to us and said, "You've changed our mind. We had no clue that it was this bad. Like, we're libertarians. We believe in freedom of everything." And they're like, "We're not voting for this anymore." So it was really good, really good. Very, very, even if it's just a couple minds we change during the advocacy and educate them about today's what I call industrialized marijuana, it's really healing. So thank you, Jelly.
Hey, yeah, it's quite a connection you can get through people through this, through this. There's a real commonality we feel.
Yeah.
Yes, it's really hard. I understand because of what my daughter went through, what you parents are going through. But it's, yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else want to say anything or make a comment? I've got some wonderful comments in the chat. I really appreciate all the love and support. You guys, you guys all give me the love and support. I'm giving thank you for what I do. And you guys do the same for me.
Aubree?
Yes.
Hi, this is Corinne.
Oh, there's Corinne. I was just talking about you.
I'm sorry. Right when you were talking about me, I lost my connection, so I'm not really sure what you said, but I just wanted to say you are amazing. I couldn't have done all that I had to do when I was here in Columbus, working hard, all alone, and you came like my rescuer and helped me with so many things. And I so appreciate everything you've done. And you are an amazing advocate. Everybody you spoke to, you made an amazing impression upon. And I mean, I don't really know what's going to happen on November 7th, but I can tell you that Aubree and I did everything we possibly could. So I just want to thank you in front of everybody. It was just amazing. And your story is heartbreaking and inspiring at the same time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Corinne. I think that moment Corinne and I had together, we were together 8 days supporting each other. And that work was like the best thing that could have happened to both of us. Because this whole thing, navigating this whole thing is so hard. It can be so contentious. And then, Corinne telling her story about her daughter every day, multiple times a day, it just takes an emotional toll. And you need somebody there to build you up and say, "Hey, you can do this. How can I help?" And so even during one of the press conferences, I stood next to Corinne and held the picture of her and her daughter, the last picture of them before her daughter was killed. And I tell you, it was probably the best press conference I have ever attended. It was powerful. So thank you, Corinne, for standing up for all of our families. And I will have, Corinne will come share her story. She's done it on Every Brain Matters. It's on the YouTube channel, but I'm inviting her to come onto the Saturday Marathon meeting, but we're going to wait till next year. She needs a break, I'm sure, a while before she comes and does this. But, I think parents really learn a lot from her story, too. So I love you, Corinne. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I love you too, Aubree. Thank you so much.
Well, okay. Thank you, guys. We're a little bit after 7. I just see so many familiar faces and all the great work you do. Follow Peter's. Peter, do you want to just introduce yourself to maybe people who don't know you and tell them about the work you do and the name of your program so they can look it up on YouTube?
Yeah, my name is Peter Komendowski, and I preside over Partnership for Healthy Iowa. But one of the biggest outreach programs we have is a show called Surviving Bad, where people, share their stories. Yeah, I mean, it's basically a forum to share stories so people can plug in and learn. Our show broadcasts primarily in the Midwest. I've heard it's in Kentucky, Indiana, Missouri, Iowa, South Dakota, Nebraska, Minnesota, Wisconsin. But the most important thing is we also have links on our website, so it's fair use. Anybody can download them and use them. So they traffic a lot further. I know that there were classes in the Middle East using some of the shows, people in Europe using some of the shows, just to give insights as to how we're reacting and dealing with these problems here, because we're not alone. I mean, these problems exist all over the world and all over the country. So if anybody's interested in sharing their story, on Surviving Bad. I mean, if you go onto YouTube and look up Surviving Bad, you'll find me. If you want to send me an email, peter@ahealthyiowa.org, I'll put it in the chat.
I was going to say, put your information and put the link to your YouTube channel in the chat too, Peter. So Peter is a wonderful host.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's an excellent journalist and reporter and an interviewer. So his show is very impactful. So check it out, everybody.
Yeah, and I really didn't come into this as a professional interviewer. I work with people in prevention all over the state. But when media come off to do the show, and that was 10 years ago, we've now done over 250 shows. It's going to be close to 300 at the end of this year.
Wow.
I learned a lot being in that role, because usually I'm out in the communities working with people like you are, and being in this role, it's so great like any of you, if you want to share your story, I think I threw my phone number up there too. You're welcome to call me anytime. If it helps you with your healing, if it feels good for you, then it might also be something that other people can learn from and help them feel better. So I want to be part of this healing process. I don't expect people to do it if they're not comfortable with the idea, but we do our best. I'm going to get the link real quick for how to look at all the shows.
No hurry. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, I don't have it memorized because it's like a complicated link.
I did want to put a couple more people on the spot, and of course, please chime in if you want to ask a question. But Donnell, do you want to say hello and tell everybody who you are? I don't know if you're there, or you're just listening, or you're in a spot where you can say hello or want to say hello. And maybe she's not unmuting, so she's probably. Oh, and I think we lost her. She might have went to unmute, and then you know how you kind of do that and you sign off. But Donnell was my son's host mom for 1.5 years. We call her Baba. Oh, there she is. No, she's still there. And so her and I are like connected to the hip. I mean, you just don't go through that with another family without getting really close. So she's my dear friend, and she's a wonderful, beautiful person and artist. And I'm very grateful that her and her husband opened their home to my son and to me. So there she is. Hi.
Can you hear me? Hi.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, I got lost in the airwaves somewhere. I was trying to get back. Thank you, Aubree. Listen, I just want to say that listening to the story again, of course, I started reliving things because I felt like I was part of it, so much of it anyway. And me living with us, we had such an insight to him and his family, and you guys are wonderful. But I'll tell you, I used to say to myself, I would go, I don't know how she's going to get through this one. And I don't know how she's going to make it through this. And I don't know this. And many nights you go to sleep as a parent when you're in this situation, and you cry yourself to sleep because you don't have the answers and you don't know how you're going to face tomorrow. And I want to say that I lost my daughter to drugs not too long ago, it seems. And Aubree was right there with me. She was older than the kids we're talking about. But I realized that, we're all members of a club that we don't want to be in. And I was so worried about Aubree because when you're sitting there and you're holding a child of yours that's, dying, you wonder, how are you going to make it? And Aubree was right there doing what she does best, which is, just support and love. And I was so grateful for it. You don't ever get used to the funerals. You don't get used to all of that, but you also think when your kid's been maybe sober like mine for 13 years, you're home free and you just aren't. But Aubree was, I just can't tell you, it made a difference. I think in me surviving all of that was knowing that she was witnessing to me, even though she didn't have to say a word. And Aubree, I love you, and I'm, don't know what I'm going to do when you move to Colorado, but I'll be okay. But I will miss you terribly, and I'm old enough to be your mom. And so you were just like that daughter standing there in front of me, holding my other one. And anyway, I love you very much. And I don't know how to get the picture on here. Guys, I have gray hair and I can't watch things very well. So I just want you to know I love you. And I think that the world is a better place with you in it. And I think the people who are associated with you are really maybe even luckier than they realize. Love you.
I love you. And I think I need to send her a check after that. So thank you. No, I did not pay her to say that or come on here to say all that. She gave my family a lot of love and support. And I thank her for the opportunity to be there when her beautiful daughter Heather was passing. And there was moments I wish I would have captured more on camera. And Donnell said, I wish she would have videotaped that moment because her daughter was sober for a long time and became homeless. And she did try to help her many, many times. And when she ended up in the hospital, you can see some of Donnell's story on the Every Brain Matters YouTube channel. And maybe we need to have her on too to tell her whole story because it's very powerful. But, watching a mother clean the dirt out and behind her daughter's nails, after being homeless for so long and just really cleaning her up and loving her while she was in the process of dying was a moment I will never forget. So the strength of Donnell, all her family is just amazing. And she allowed my son to move into her home during when I couldn't provide a stable home for him. And I guess we're bonded forever. And I love you too. Yes.
Love you too. We're in that club we don't want to be in.
Yeah. But the silver lining is we found each other,
Yes, very much so.
Love and support each other. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. Now, I don't know how to get out of here. So you guys, I'm going to learn though, because I want to do more of these Zoom. This was really, really nice to be a part of it. And thank you for letting me know today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome.
When I end the meeting, it'll knock you off. So don't worry about it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I love you.
Love you.
Okay. Does anybody else want to say anything else? I know we're over our time, and I just appreciate y'all being here. We've got Kyle on who has shared his testimony, and we're so grateful for him. We've got Amber, who has just joined the Every Brain Matters community. We're very grateful for her. And I recognize so many more of your names. There's Belinda. Thank you for your beautiful comments. And Ashley and Cynthia and Winnie is advocating and telling her story. She's wonderful. Claire, thank you for being here. Kylie, thank you for your wonderful comments. And hi, Allison. Thank you for being here tonight too. So I hope I acknowledge everybody and thank you all for being here. And I hope you have a lovely weekend. And we'll see you next time.